Welcome, everyone. We just opened the training room and we're going to give people a few minutes to log on, so get comfy and we'll get started in a few minutes. Everybody is on mute and your cameras are off for this training. And welcome. If you're just joining us, welcome. Cameras and mics are off for everybody, but we do encourage you to say hello in the chat. Thank you, Amanda, for getting us kicked off there. We'll give people a few more minutes to join in. I know sometimes virtual things, we got to just get settled, get logged on, take a moment for that. So thanks everybody for saying hi. So glad you're here. If you just logged on, welcome. We have everyone on mute and cameras off for this training. So use the chat to say hello if you like. I see Cheryl, you have your hand up. If you could type what you need into the chat, that would be awesome. And we'll get started in just a few more moments. Thanks everybody for your patience. We're going to give people a chance to get settled and then jump right in. Oh, thanks, Cheryl. Cheryl's just saying hi by raising her hand. Awesome. You'll see that at the top of Teams, there's a little hand icon, raising your hand for a question. But again, we'd love for you to just type those into the chat if you could. And then there's also a little smiley face to make a reaction. So if you learn something surprising, if you hear something you love, go ahead and react during this training. I'm going to go ahead and officially get us started. And again, everyone is on mute, no cameras for attendees today, so rest assured you won't accidentally say something that everybody can hear. We're going to ask that you put questions in the chat. And welcome to session 1. I'm Julie Sunderman. I am the nutrition program consultant and registered dietitian for the NCDHHS Division of Aging. And I'm so glad we have so many of you here today. We actually have 101 people on this call right now per our count, which is fantastic. I've met many of you. There are some of you who I don't know yet. I've been in this role with the Division of Aging for about 2.5 years now. And my job is to oversee the congregate and home delivered nutrition programs for the state, as well as the senior farmers market nutrition program and a few other special nutrition projects. So that's me. And without further ado, we will jump in. I also wanted to introduce my colleague, Shania Gales. She is the Healthy Aging Specialist. She just came back on camera for the division, and she's going to be monitoring the chat for me during this training and just trying to flag things that come up and post links in the chat. So she'll help you out. If you're having any difficulties, you can just write in the chat to her. So thank you, Shania. Okay, so before we get in, I just wanted to highlight a few overarching things. So, as many of you know, and I'm going to show a slide on this in just a minute, it's been a while since we have had a senior nutrition program training live. So, a couple weeks ago, I presented the material that I'm covering today, plus the material that will be covered in the other three nutrition training sessions at the Meals on Wheels of North Carolina Senior Nutrition Program Conference. So I got to test out this information in person, and it was so lovely to see those of you who were there with me that day. But I knew that not everyone would be able to make that, and it's a lot of information to cover. So we decided to break it out into 4 1-hour sessions. So today, our session is all about laying the foundation, understanding what the senior nutrition program is and its role in the aging network. And again, we've got 3 more sessions scheduled after today. So keep in mind that today is not designed to answer everything that you need to know to run your nutrition programs, but I really encourage you to ask questions as they come up for you and put those in the chat if you're comfortable with that, because even if we're not going to talk about that topic today, knowing that you and or other people have questions about certain topics will help us tweak our next 3 sessions to make sure that we get to those topics that may be of special interest to you. So please ask questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible, but there may be some that are better suited to address in other sections. And let's see, we also have not done this training virtually before, so we're piloting this virtual format. As we're going through, please think about, what you think is working well about this, what could be better, because we want to test this out, see if it's good. I know we have people from across the state, and it is easier for some than others to get to various places for an in-person training. So I'm hoping that this works really well, but I want your feedback on how to make this an effective training for you, a training that helps you know what to do in your jobs and how to operate the program. And then the last kind of note slash caveat that I want to give today is that there are future changes to the senior nutrition program coming down the pipeline. You may have heard about the Older Americans Act final rule that came out in 2024 for implementation in 2025. Many states, including North Carolina, are delaying that implementation date with permission from the Administration on Community Living, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there are some implications in that final rule for the senior nutrition program, and we will be updating our nutrition service standards, which are our North Carolina Senior Nutrition Program rules, and that will change some things about the program. Now, the overall intent, the goals of the program, those are not going to change. But keep in mind that what we talk about today and what we talk about in the other 3 sessions is true and correct right now. And these are the rules that you should be following in the senior nutrition program. But we will be updating these soon-ish. Timeline is TBD, but certainly not in state fiscal year 2026, which is July 1st, 2025, all the way through June 30th, 2026. So you don't have to worry about any changes coming until that time. And we will be sure to provide plenty of information and training opportunities about those when they do occur. There will also be a time for public comment on the proposed rule changes. So if you feel inclined to look at that and comment, we welcome that as well. Okay, so Um, just a little bit more information about the training series. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that we're going to have our next session on next Wednesday, a week from today at 9 a.m. I tried to flip-flop between 2 p.m. and 9 a.m. just to maybe promote more accessibility, just depending on people's schedules. So we will go back and forth. This is the schedule of all of the trainings. And at the end of today, we will share the registration links with you so you can get registered for sessions 2, 3, and 4. We will also send an email following today's training with those links as well. So just so, let's see, just so you know how this is going to work, this training series is designed to meet the requirement in our nutrition service standards that within 12 months of employment, the nutrition program director must participate in a training on the nutrition program management arranged by the Division of Aging. So this series is that training. So all 4 sessions are required to meet that director training requirement. However, you do not necessarily have to be live for each training because we are going to record them. So if there is a session that you cannot attend, the recordings will be available mid-December and you'll be able to watch that. We have not figured out exactly how the attestation is going to work yet, but we will have that figured out in a couple months. And once you have completed all 4, either all live, here in person, not in person, on the Teams webinar with us or via recording. Once you've done all 4, then you will have met that requirement if you're the nutrition training director. Microsoft Teams does track attendance, so we'll have a good record of who was here each session, during the actual live session time. And then we're going to provide certificates after each session as well. Those won't come right away, but we will have those for everybody who attended. And I know that some of you are watching this in a group, one person registered at your site or program, and there's a group of you watching. So if you could please email Shania about the names of the people who were in your group, because again, only your email and your name is registered, but there may be other folks with you who need certificates. So Shania, if you could put your email in the chat for them, that would be awesome. And we'll also include Shania's email on the follow-up email to you, so you have all that information wrapped up. Okay. So, next thing is, okay, so who planned to be here as of 12/17 yesterday when I pulled the registration? Okay, so we had 150 people at that time registered. Right now, I'm looking, it seems like there's 120 of you on this call. So fantastic job with showing up. That's amazing. And I just wanted to highlight that I asked you when you started in your role, and most of you, 92 out of the 150 people that registered at that time, had started either during the pandemic or after. That means that 61% of you were not working in your current role prior to the pandemic. And I'm in that role. I'm in that boat as well, given that I just started in this role about 2.5 years ago. So, many of you don't know what it was like pre-pandemic in the senior nutrition program. Many of you have not been able to participate in a live nutrition training because we have been using those YouTube videos for a while. So I'm just really excited about this series. I'm excited that you're here today, and I really hope that you get a lot out of this. So one more housekeeping thing before we really jump in. I know, one question that presenters always get is, are we going to have a copy of the slides? And the answer is yes, we will send you a copy of the slides. And here is what we're going to send in that post-session email. So we are going to send an evaluation link. We want your feedback today. We're going to send today's slides. We're also going to send the links that we share. I will also send a zip file e-binder is what I'm calling it. I shared this with the in-person participants at the Meals on Wheels conference training. This is intended to be similar to what Audrey Edmonston used to do for you all. If you have been working in your role for a while and you remember the in-person trainings, she would provide a physical binder of resources and all sorts of job aids, essentially. We are providing this digitally. So there's a zip file with different resources. I'm really looking at it as a starting point, and we will add to that over time, but we're going to send you what we have right now for that. And then finally, the registration for the other sessions. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what is a senior nutrition program? How does it fit into the Aging Network? And then just go over some basic nutrition and food security information is relevant to older adults. So again, this is all about the foundation. I don't know if anybody was able to tune into the wonderful webinar hosted by Central Lina this morning and presented by Amy Gottwals from US Aging. But if you did, you heard really good, great background information on the Older Americans Act at the federal level. And it was such a great overview. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to talk about kind of what it looks like at the state level in North Carolina as well. Okay, so one more thing. If you feel inclined as a little warm up, if you haven't already, put your name in the chat and you want to practice, I saw this on Instagram. It's a little question, and instead of asking about what is your Myers-Briggs personality test, like ENFJ, ISTP, all these different personality types that people can have, this person, Richard Scary Love, wanted to know what Richard Scary car you are. Richard Scary is a children's book author and illustrator, very whimsical. Perhaps you remember it from your childhood. Perhaps you have children in your life and are familiar with that through this. But if you identify with, oops, uh-oh, did I stop sharing? I might have done that. Hold on, let's try again. Okay. Oh, I am still sharing. Great. Okay.
You're sharing.
Okay. I think we're good. Yeah, so if you feel inclined to put what Richard Scary car you identify with, I just think this is so fun. And I did this with the in-person people. And today I feel a little bit like Sam's shoe shop. I've got some boxes falling off the back of my car, but I'm trying to get to where I want to go. I love the pumpkin as well. Very festive. Okay, so without further ado, we will jump into our agenda for today. Okay, so what is the Senior Nutrition Program? And I also want to acknowledge, I know we've got a range of experience here. We have some new folks, we have some very seasoned, experienced folks, but hopefully just talking about this, looking at it from a new perspective is going to help everyone learn something new or just see something differently than they did before. Okay, so the Senior Nutrition Program. The Senior Nutrition Program provides a healthy meal and opportunities for social connection to eligible older adults age 60 or older. This happens through congregate meals at a nutrition site or home delivered meals, which go to a client's home, and it prioritizes clients with the greatest social and economic needs. In terms of how we think about reporting on this service or reporting on services delivered, we think about this as unit-based. And what we mean by that is 1 unit of service in the senior nutrition program is 1 meal. So if you have 200 units in a month, that means you served 200 meals in our nutrition program. And please ask questions as we go. So how is the nutrition program funded in North Carolina? So there are 2 primary ways. First is through the Home and Community Care Block Grant, also known as HCCBG. You've probably heard that term quite a bit. The other way is through the Nutrition Services Incentive Program, or NSIP. And we're going to talk a little bit about both of those funding sources right now. Now, there are other funding sources too. I'm thinking the PEAS project, which we are not going to be talking about today, but I'm focusing on these 2 overarching buckets that you all are responsible for on a daily basis in your program. Okay, so the Home and Community Care Block Grant is unique to North Carolina. It was an initiative created many years ago under Division of Aging Leadership, and it bundled federal, state, and local funds for senior services. And so the rationale for that type of structure is that it provided administrative simplification. So instead of having multiple administrative requirements based on the different funding sources, the block grant allowed for 1 set of policies for reporting, reimbursement, budgeting, service standards, etc. And it also provided counties greater discretion and authority in determining services, levels, choice of providers, and it was just designed to improve planning and coordination of in-home and community-based services. So I kind of think of it like we have these 3 buckets of funding that contribute to the Home and Community Care Block Grant. And my fancy illustration here, they get poured into the HCCBG bucket where they mix and they become a new thing. The HCCBG, it's this beautiful sort of brownish purple, a lovely fall color. And so we have this 1 bucket of funding that covers our senior nutrition program. So that's a little bit about what the Home and Community Care Block Grant is. It is a blending of different funding sources that you all use to provide your services. So in terms of the Home and Community Care Block Grant ARMS codes, we have 4 different codes that you may use to report your meals. Regular congregate nutrition is 180, home delivered meals is 020, congregate liquid nutrition supplement is 182, and then home delivered meals liquid nutrition supplement is 022. Again, as we're going through, don't hesitate to type any questions that you have. Okay, so now what is the Nutrition Services Incentive Program? And I told this to the folks in person a couple weeks ago, and it took me a while to wrap my mind around what this is exactly. And so and I think I've come up with a better way to describe it, but again, please give me your feedback because I want to make this as easy to understand as possible. So the way I've started thinking about NSIP is that it's a little treat. It's like a little something extra, sort of like a dessert that states receive when they serve meals meeting the Older Americans Act, and in the case of North Carolina, HCCBG requirements. So the more meals that meet the HCCBG requirements, regardless of how those meals are paid for, that North Carolina can report to the Administration on Community Living, which is our funding agency, our federal funding agency. The larger the state's share of the federal allocation for NSIP dollars. So this little extra funding is provided for meals meeting HCCBG requirements served to clients who are eligible for HCCB services. And that would mean that it's all HCCBG meals are eligible for NSIP, that little extra treat. So we've got our little cupcake, which is our NSIP additional funding provided when we provide our HCCBG meals. Then additionally, if we serve the same type of meals, so meals that meet 1/3 recommended dietary allowance or RDA to clients who are eligible in the same way as our eligibility requirements for HCCBG. We ensure that there is no means testing for these meals, that there's no meal fee, and that there is a voluntary contribution opportunity for participants. Then those meals are meeting the same requirements as HCCBG, even if they are paid for by a different funding source. So if those programs, or if those meals, if your program provides those meals, you have a different funding source, but they're the same meals, same clients, etc., then those also get that little extra bit of funding, NSIP funding. Now, if you are providing meals that, and actually before I go on, I just want to clarify about means testing and what we mean when we say means testing, because I know that term gets thrown around a lot. So means testing is when a program uses an income eligibility threshold to determine whether or not a person is eligible for a service. So, for example, the SNAP program, aka food stamps, is a program that uses means testing. So that means that if a person earns more income than is allowed to qualify for the program, then they're not going to be eligible for SNAP benefits. And to do this, the SNAP administrators have participants provide some kind of proof of income or lack of income to qualify for SNAP. Medicaid and CAP-DA eligibility is also determined by income, among other factors. Thus, CAP-DA meals are not eligible for NSIP because they are means testing clients and they have not met that requirement that participants are not means tested in determining eligibility. So although we might ask our HCCBG participants about their income in the senior nutrition program, whatever they tell us, their income does not determine whether or not they're eligible for our services. Instead, it helps programs make decisions about who participates because income is definitely a factor in determining economic need, and we're targeting folks who have the greatest economic need. But that factor alone does not determine if someone receives services or not, like it does in SNAP. So all of that is to say that that's what means testing is. And so if there are different requirements for the meals, like a participant is means tested and they're provided using a different funding source, then they cannot be counted towards NSIP only meals because they don't meet the requirements for for reporting that. So the codes in ARMS, if you do have funding, additional funding that you use to provide these additional meals that aren't HCCBG, but they meet all HCCBG requirements, you would report those congregate meals as 021 and the home delivered meals as 181. Okay, I'm going to pause here and just see if anything has come up that I need to answer. Shania, can you let me know if there's any specific questions?
Yes, someone wanted to know if the programs are affected by the government shutdown.
Okay, are the programs affected by the government shutdown? So this is a very complicated question to answer because I know that many of you receive HCCBG funds, but you also receive other funding. So I really can't speak to that other funding, but I can tell you that as of today, we, the state, continue to successfully draw down our previously allocated Older Americans Act funding through our payment management system. So we are going to keep using our existing grant balances until they're fully expended. The rate at which funds are expended, depends on the number of services, which can vary month to month. And so at this time, the NCDHHS anticipates that funding will remain sufficient through at least November services. We will be watching though and communicating with our AAAs. So I know that that is not super specific, but in the very, very short term, we are okay for right now as far as we know. Okay. So let's talk about the funding stream. And this, yeah, talking about federal funds, this is a great segue. So the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services oversees lots and lots and lots and lots of programs and agencies, one of which is the Administration for Community Living, which is where we our programs currently sit. Now, the webinar by Centralina this morning kind of talked about potentially some changes that are being enacted there. I'm not going to get into that right now. But the Administration for Community Living has been the federal focal point and the way that the advocacy agency for older people. And through ACL, we, State Units on Aging, and so the Division of Aging in North Carolina is our state unit on aging. We receive the funding for the senior nutrition program. Okay, and so this kind of is how the service delivery works here. Once the funds reach the North Carolina DHHS Division of Aging, we contract with 16 area agencies on aging, or AAAs. I know some of you from the AAAs are here today, and so really glad to have you. And then the AAAs contract with either nonprofit agencies, for-profit agencies, or county government agencies to deliver agreed upon services. And most of you here today are from one of those three types of entities. So welcome to you as well, and we're really glad to have you. So just to give you a sense of the AAA distribution, here are our 16 AAAs and their region. I know many of you are familiar with this already, but if you're newer, here is our AAA map. We're going to include a link to the contact information for AAAs, etc. if you need that, although you probably don't. But we did recently update this map with, or you know, it may have been the NC4A, so excuse me if I misspoke there, but each AAA has a wonderful name. And then we also use letters to identify them too. So we may say something like Region B, or we may say Land of Sky, and we mean the same thing. Okay, so let's look a little bit more closely at the Older Americans Act. There are various titles within the Older Americans Act, and the one that we are concerned about with senior nutrition is Title III. So Title III authorizes grants for states and community programs on aging. And within each title, there are parts. Within Title III, state and community programs, we are concerned about Part C, which is senior nutrition. So if you ever hear the phrase Title 3C or 3C, that is always referring to the senior nutrition program. Then within Title 3C, we've got two separate buckets of money and different programs. C1 is for congregate nutrition, and C2 is for home delivered meals. And if you need help remembering what is C1 and what is C2, I always think about congregate comes before home delivered in the alphabet. And so C1 is congregate, and then after that we have C2, which is home delivered meals. So if you ever hear Title III, C2, then you can think home delivered meals. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so of course, the Home and Community Care Block Grant is far more than just nutrition. There are many allowable HCCBG services, but today we are focused just on congregate nutrition and home delivered meals, which is, of course, why you are all here. So just to talk a little bit about some of the program objectives of this really vital, food security and health promotion program is that we want to promote health and prevent disease for older adults. Another key factor is reducing social isolation and increasing social interaction and social connection, linking older adults with community-based services based on their needs, providing opportunities for meaningful community involvement. And all of this can kind of be summed up with the phrase that our program is more than a meal. Yes, the nutrition is super important, but the social connection is vital as well. All right, so moving right along, I'd like to share this video with you. This video, Shania, you can put the link in the chat if you like, but we'll also send it out afterwards, and I'm going to show it right now so you don't have to open it on another screen. But it's just a promotion video that the Administration on Community Living, Nutrition, and Aging Resource Center put together, and I think it's a beautiful video. And if you ever need a little, one, pick me up because it's just hopeful, but then two, quick and easy way to share a little bit about what this program is with someone, then this video might be a great way to do that. So I will press play, and then we'll be back together in about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. If you had any technical difficulties with the video, we will be sharing the link to that video in the email after the session today, so you'll have a chance to watch it on your own. Um, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I think that, as we think about advocacy for our programs, things like that are quick, inspiring, and easy to share are great ways to teach others about the value of the senior nutrition program. So we don't have a ton of time left. We only have about 16 minutes. So I'm going to kind of breeze through some of this nutrition and food security stuff in the interest of leaving a little time at the end for any questions that you've thought of since we began. But, again, please keep asking questions as we go. And let's talk a little bit now about hunger and food insecurity and malnutrition and where our program fits in fighting all of these issues. So hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition are all very interconnected, but they are separate issues. We think of hunger as that individual level physiological condition of not having enough to eat. So it's actually more than just those rumbles in your tummy that you might get if it's been a while since lunch. It can really do a lot of damage to the body if a person is not eating enough on a regular basis or eating the right kinds of foods. And so hunger is what we think of there when people don't have enough to eat, that physiological condition. Food insecurity, on the other hand, is we think about that as sort of like a household measure of it's an economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. So there may be many reasons that a person could be food insecure. It could be economic, it could be sort of geographic. If they live in a place that does not have easy access to grocery stores or they have transportation issues, that can lead to food insecurity. And then the last term that we're talking about right now is malnutrition. And malnutrition is also an individual level condition, kind of like hunger, but it's a condition where a person either has too little, too much, or an unbalanced intake of calories or nutrients. So, contrary to popular belief, there can be too much of a good thing. If, just because a bit of vitamin C is good for you, well, adequate amounts are good for you. If you overdose on vitamin C, if you go hard on the emergency packets, sometimes that can lead to tummy troubles and that sort of thing. So we just really want that balanced intake of all nutrients so that we don't have too little and we don't have too much. So like I said, these are often very connected issues. You can think about how malnutrition may lead to some muscle loss or loss of strength. And then that loss of strength may lead to a lack of independence or loss of mobility, and then thus contribute to food insecurity. And of course, food, the ability to get to the food that you need. And then, of course, food insecurity, not having enough food, can certainly lead to malnutrition and hunger. So these things are all very connected, and the senior nutrition program works to, address all of these issues by providing meals that are tailored to the nutrition needs of older adults, and making sure that those meals are easy or at least easier to access for them. So what we're going for is a state of food security, and our program plays a role in promoting that. And the definition of food security is access by all people at all times to enough food for an active and healthy life. Okay, I'm actually going to skip this one. I think we'll go into this later. That was just some data about our program that I think it'll be more productive to talk about it at a later session. So let's keep on our nutrition train right now. So in general, healthy eating principles. These are the tried and true nutrition advice that is going to be consistent over time. It is not a fad. It doesn't change, like these are just the general principles we want to follow. We want to eat a variety of vegetables. We want to focus on yummy, delicious fruits of various varieties. Um, Making half of the grains that we eat, those whole grains, which have great nutrients and lots of fiber, is really important as well. Eating calcium-rich food for our bones and other functions, and then lean proteins. This is the essence of what we call My Plate, which is the government's recommendations on healthy eating for Americans. So you can kind of see here, half of the plate is fruits and vegetables. About a quarter of the plate, a little more than, well, yeah, about a quarter of the plate is grains. And then a little less than a quarter of the plate is protein. And then we have some dairy for our calcium. Um, just our general healthy eating principles. You'll see, and you probably already know, the ways that the senior nutrition program really follows some of these same principles in the meals that we provide to participants. So specifically for older adults, there are some nutrients of special concern for them. Protein, calcium, and vitamin B12, as well as fluids and fiber. Those are the things that we really want to focus on for older adults. And contrary to popular belief, most Americans get more than enough protein. But what our diets lack in tends to be vegetables, fruits, and fiber. So even though most people get more than enough protein, muscle loss, which is also known as sarcopenia, is just a natural physiological part of aging. And so it's recommended that older adults consume a little bit more protein than is recommended for younger adults under age 65. And like I said, we know that muscle loss, with muscle loss, an older adult may experience frailty or a loss of independence. So we really want to do everything we can to maintain muscle mass as we age. And not only do we do that by having just a little bit more protein in our older adult years, but also through strength training and resistance exercise. So encourage those older adults to keep up their exercise routines if they are able to. Calcium is really important as well for older adults. Um, of course, everybody knows that it's needed to maintain bone strength, but it's also important for some other processes in the body as well. And older adults have higher calcium needs because as people age, their ability to absorb calcium efficiently decreases. So the thought is, let's boost the calcium up a bit so that there's a better chance that more of that will be absorbed, knowing that the absorption is not quite as efficient as it may have been in the younger years. Additionally, well, actually, I shouldn't say additionally, as a side note, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about meals and menus, but many people as they age are more prone to lactose intolerance, and that's because the gut, as people age, produces less of the enzyme that is needed to break that lactose down into digestible um, uh, particles is coming to mind, but particles is not the scientific term. So excuse me that I'm saying particles right now, but basically digestible pieces. And so older adults have more lactose intolerance. So what I've been thinking about a lot is how do we meet our calcium needs for older adults in our meals without forcing dairy upon certain folks? Also, depending on a person's racial background, they may be more prone to lactose intolerance than other people too. So just something we'll be thinking about, and we'll talk more about that too. So B12 is found in protein sources generally, also in fortified grains like cereals, and some non-dairy milks like soy milk may be fortified with vitamin B12. It's needed for proper nerve function and DNA production and red blood cell production. So it's really important as well. And just like calcium, people's bodies tend to absorb B12 less efficiently as they age. And so many older adults are at risk for B12 deficiency. And then finally, fluids are super important. As people age, their sensation of thirst tends to decrease. So they may actually need fluids and water, but they may not feel thirsty, have that sensation of thirst. I need to drink something. There are also lots of other reasons that older adults may not get enough fluid. They may restrict their fluid because of incontinence issues. That's a whole, fluids is a whole thing, but we know that fluids are very important for older adults. And then fiber is as well. Fortunately, by eating fruits and vegetables, we can get fiber and fluids, which is a win-win. Okay, just wanted to highlight this MyPlate for older adults. So it's very similar to what I showed you a couple slides ago, but it specifically mentions fluids, and it highlights herbs and spices as really important because herbs and spices can be a way to add flavor to food without also adding salt. And then, yeah, and then finally, why is this all important? Because good nutrition and food access does a lot of great things for us. It improves our health. And this is us as well as our participants. It helps maintain functionality, prolongs independence. It benefits your quality of life. It saves money to individuals and society, and it also reduces stress. Having food insecurity is a stressor. So knowing that you have good, healthy food to eat is a way to reduce stress, or is a way for us to help others reduce stress. And then, of course, one more healthy eating principle, one that the senior nutrition programs, especially congregate meals, emphasize, is to eat together when possible. There are all sorts of emerging studies about the impact of social connection on promoting health and reducing risk of early death. And so this togetherness, this social connection that our meals bring out is just vitally important. So that actually brings us to the end of the training for today. And please know that there is a lot more to cover. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So we've got 3 other sessions. I really hope that you will attend those. My contact information is on the screen, same with Shania's. Again, please email Shania if you had multiple people watching with you today. We hope to see you next week at 9 a.m. And please scan the QR code on your screen to complete the evaluation of today's program. Shania can also put that in the chat. But before we hit 3 o'clock, Shania, are there any questions that came up that I should address before we all go our separate ways for the afternoon?
Yes, there was one question in the chat. Are there any recommendations about how to pair calcium with other food groups to boost bioavailability?
That's a great question. So there are recommendations about foods to avoid when trying to boost calcium intake. In terms of like pairing calcium with a specific food to increase intake, I am not aware of something like that. But for instance, it- there is this substance called oxalates, and that's in a lot of like cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, that can sort of interfere with calcium absorption. So, if you wanted to boost your calcium absorption, you could drink your milk at a separate time than eating your broccoli. Iron can also get in the way of calcium absorption, um, which is a little tricky too, given, yeah, yeah. So the short answer is it's a little complicated, but there are foods to avoid, and I can send you some information about that if you like. I hope that's helpful. I'll just put it in the email to everybody so everybody has it. Anything else? And if you think of something, I'll see you next week too, so we can talk then.
Someone wanted to know if the evaluation can be sent to their email. That's the last
Yes,
question.
we are going to include the evaluation link in the email that we're going to send out.
I think that is
All
all.
right. Well, I think that's all for today. Thank you all so much for being here. Hope to see you next Wednesday at 9. And have a great afternoon. Bye.